Welcome to CocoaHeads 190, everyone. Wow, great. Awesome. In the spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Cool, tonight we have some great talks. The Jane will be, Jane Idelson, yeah, great. We'll be saying, don't wait for the heart attack, addressing tech debt before it's too late. And then I actually wanted to confirm Sam's last name, but I forgot that. So I'm going to go with Berryman. Where is he? Are we good? No. Oh, okay. Okay, metrics or it didn't happen. Measuring design systems. I don't know. That's what got me. Okay, cool. Code of conduct, if someone's being bullied, you know, you can jump on there and leave a... Oh yeah, so if people are not having fun, if people look uncomfortable, whatever, let some of the organizers know. We want it to be a safe place that, you know, is inclusive. You can go onto the website and log information. Maybe. Bok? Yes. Email there, yep. Thank you. Housekeeping. If we need to evacuate, oh no, that's toilets. If we need to go to the toilet, we're going up past the elevator to the right. And if we need to exit in case of an emergency, it's the same spot. So yes. Maybe it's both. I need, okay. Questions? During presentations, it's good to have you back, buddy. During presentations, don't ask questions unless the presenter asks. We'll wait for questions at the end because there's an online audience and yeah, great. We'll pass out microphones. You can ask questions on the Slack channel, Melbourne Meetup, Melbourne-Meetup, great. I think I'm covering things. Normally I'll look back, so I'm looking at the screen and yeah, new things. Thanks, man. Thank you to our sponsor, but I'm not engaging with the audience as much. I feel like I'm looking at the screen. Thank you to our sponsors, Mantle Group, they're a gold sponsor, and REA Group, our silver sponsor. We couldn't do the nights without them. Now I'm just looking into the distance. Okay. Some other events that are happening this month. Coding night. I'm going to look back. I like looking back. Coding night on Wednesday. I haven't made the last couple and I apologize. I'll be there for sure next Wednesday, 15th of October. It's here at Mantle Group. We do it with GDG. Welcome. And Flutter, it's a great time to just code and yeah, need to make notes and be better at this. Okay, great. Social night, Tuesday, last Tuesday of the month at Brick Lane Brewing. Yeah, thank you, Amy. Great. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Some other groups. Sydney CocoaHeads, GDG Melbourne. For all the CocoaHeads in Australia and New Zealand, go to aunz.cocoaheads.social. Awesome. How to find us, melbournecocoaheads.com, or scan that QR code. Wonder where that goes. And on Mastodon. Great. These are some channels on Slack. Melbourne Meetup, that's for tonight. Melbourne Volunteers, if you want to help out, if you want to give emceeing a try, jump in that channel. And yeah, just tag me in it. I'll get back to you straight away. If you're looking for work or looking for people to work, jump on #jobs. Jobs. Cool, and if you want to speak, or you want to suggest speakers, jump in speakers, #speakers. Great, now we're going to kick things off with Jane, the Jane, I guess. Everyone put your hands together for Jane.
I guess after such a introduction, it's going to be dull, so just keep your expectations low, please. So my name is Jane. Just Jane is fine. There was no need to struggle so much. So today's talk probably not going to be too brand new information to majority of people here, but still important to talk about, and we can spark a conversation after the talk as well. We're going to start with the movie, Shamelessly Stolen from Instagram. I'm sure you have seen either the exact variation or similar to this, so let's just pay attention to this one for a second.
Gandalf, this is the fourth major outage in less than 2 months. We're under a lot of pressure from stakeholders and clients. We need to know, why does this system keep failing?
It keeps failing because we built a critical, event-driven system in record time, without proper design, under pressure to show results.
But it did launch. And it worked, at least for a while.
It worked like a patched-up raft in a storm. Looked fine until you put weight on it.
Would you say this is an infrastructure scaling issue or something in the code?
It's neither. It's a decision-making issue. You kept pushing for features, sprint after sprint, while we screamed about mounting debt and architectural cracks. No one listened. You wanted results, not warnings.
We just need to understand the technical root cause.
All right. The root cause is that our event pipeline has no retry mechanism, no error recovery, and no visibility. We lose messages silently. The queue drops them, the logs miss them, and we don't even know until a customer screams. Did you get it now?
Okay, but can't we patch that in? Add some logging, maybe increase the instance size. It should stabilize things in the short term.
Throwing more memory at bad code just delays the next failure. What we need is 2 to 3 uninterrupted sprints to rebuild the core properly.
That's going to push back our roadmap. We've already promised to clients and investors.
Okay, then maybe we spin up an internal hackathon. Couple days, free food, some light structure. We might be surprised what the team can pull off when they're motivated.
A hackathon won't fix technical debt. It just makes leadership feel like they're doing something. We don't need burritos. We need space to clean up the mess you created.
What if we just scale the infra, add a second queue, bump container limits, and throw more nodes at it?
Oh, God help us.
Okay. Not my creation, as I said, shamelessly stolen, but it was just in time for when I was preparing for the talk, so I just figured it's going to be interesting. Who can tell me what is the difference between bad code and technical debt? Just a ballpark? Any guess? Come on.
Technical debt can be good code, but not supportable, not manageable.
Yeah, generally speaking, the difference is in the fact that technical debt was a good or good enough code at the time of writing. Potential oversights of all the future scaling, time crunch, cutting corners due to delivery pressure, all of this can contribute to the tech debt piling up. So not necessarily the code that has been written was bad code. It just became not suitable for the current task. And then we find ourselves in an awkward position. Let's talk about it quite literally. Yep, you're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. Yep, that's me. Lying on the floor, not really able to move properly without pain, feeling stuck, wondering what do I do next and how I untangle myself from this pickle. Well, let's start from the beginning. Oh, not that beginning. Yeah, that's better. This is how it started. This is where I didn't know what the future holds, what the consequences of my poor judgments and feeling invincible and omnipotent. This is my app. Then we try something new and exciting, scale a load a bit, push some boundaries, ignoring the signals our body sends us, covering the smoke instead of fixing the fire. That worked, right? We don't feel the warnings anymore, just disable them. We can go further. Good enough becomes new good, I actually remember the joke about the doctor asking the patient what's the amount of pain they are feeling. And the patient say, just normal amount, 5 out of 10. And the doctor looked confused, like, normal amount is no pain at all, right? That creates a false sense of normality and drives you or your code further away from being healthy. The code base is a living, breathing organism. It requires maintenance, checkups, constant support, much like human body. When we push ourselves or the code base beyond its limits, we need to make sure enough maintenance and care is applied to it. Working on the limit, we saw the movie, can only drive you so far. If you ignore the signals that body sends you, you might end up needing to rewrite the entire core, the entire app, or request a new body. That would be cool if this were available. I'm not telling you that just to flex on how things should be done. No code base is perfect. No delivery has endless time frame. And frankly, no human is healthy. But when you apply pressure, delivery or physical, you need to step back and fix the stretch. This might mean making habit of letting some time after a big delivery to reflect on the corners cut and fixing what needs support. Reflecting on decisions, discuss potential expansions, etc. Not jumping straight to the next feature, since this one was a big success. If code base is a living, breathing organism, we need to treat it as such, keep it maintained, supported, and always up to date. Letting the time aside for maintenance requires a company-wide shift. Pushing back when delivery is pressing is never easy, especially in fast-growing companies. When you speak up about the tech debt, think of a deadline that is imposed on you. Is it really a deadline? Or rather, is it really a deadline? Or arbitrary date for when your product wants the feature ready? The difference here is very important. The want can be negotiated, but the need, such as government regulation or requirement, cannot. When there is a room for negotiation, always allow yourself to spend some time to regroup, refactor, seal up those corners that were cut during the delivery. Much like after training session, it is important to let your body heal and rest. Stretching beyond your capabilities is never going to get you far or fast, and you will pay the price. You can't really negotiate. I'm gonna have some practical tips. So differentiate between the hard deadline and soft deadline. Do you really need to achieve that to a certain time frame? Always put time aside for regroup and fixing the fires made during the crunch. Try to think ahead beyond the current feature. This will allow the scaling with less pain in the future. Always refactor at downtimes. Keep the code up to date with the latest industry standards. And my favorite one, keep learning and stay curious. This is my favorite one because it's not really related to the technical debt, but a general rule of thumb for our profession and Alzheimer prophylactic. Questions?
How do you identify what's technical debt and what's bad code? Like if it's not your code even.
Always assume good intention. And no judgments.
And then prioritize it, I guess.
Now, for what it's worth, you can pretty much check, like see when something was written poorly, or some architecture won't hold up to the newer, to the new load. So, like force casting every single variable is probably a bad code, whereas I'm treating everything as optional, whereas you could just apply some architectural decision and make some of those non-optional where possible or where needed, would be considered like a potential for it addressing as a technical debt.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Jane. What do we do with the opposite situation if you've got like a perfectionist who doesn't want to release anything because it's not quite ready?
Oh, those are the worst, right?
Yeah.
So we actually have a phrase in our language that goes, perfection is the enemy of the good, which means you probably never reach the perfection. And by doing that, you can harm something that is already working, that is already there. But also we can't future-proof 100%. This zero technical debt that we heard the talk is kind of utopia, so to speak. It's something that we want to get to, but we will never be there because the technology adapts much faster than we're capable to rewrite all of it. But also, those new shiny toys normally would go with the zero-day bugs, which are also at some point going to be considered a technical debt because you adopted something, and then it has these zero-day bugs. You work around them, and then this workaround would become a technical debt eventually.
Should I be thinking about technical debt like something that I go into and then slowly pay off over time, and then it's like, because you know people, debt can be considered a good thing. Is it like something where I'm like, all right, I'm taking a quick technical loan here, and then paying it off slowly, but then I don't want to get into a situation where, oh no, I've got all this debt to pay off, and
Are we talking banking terms?
well, I just mean in general code, like, because sometimes, yeah, if you like, you write the code and you're like, yeah, that's not like you just, yeah, the perfectionism thing, right? It's like some stuff is good enough, but then to keep track of that good enough stuff, and then how do you like weigh the prioritizing what actually needs to be changed?
I did take this analogy with the human body, not just because it's funny. This is literally how it works. So you have a big delivery, say you're releasing a giant feature or something, and you know that it will require some sacrifices during the delivery because the time constraints, and you probably don't have enough people to make it good, not good enough, but good. And then after this one, much like after the training session, you would need to just relax your muscles and just apply some maintenance, like physiotherapy or whatever. That's pretty much the same. So like when you finish the feature, like instead of, well, not instead of, probably in addition to doing all of those retros, what went wrong and like what did we, what could have been done better, you can actually apply all of those, what could have been done better, into the actual work items. Not just talk about it, how we're not going to do things next time, but rather just sit and do those things that you were wanted to do for the next time. Just do it this time. And yeah, I know it feels like a flex. Well, maybe you have infinite time to do that, but even when you're writing the brand new feature, even when you just landed on a file or a class, and you see something that would benefit from very small, tiny bit of refactor, just consider doing that. It's already called, what's Boy Scout development? Just leave the code in a better place that you found it. It's pretty much what it is.
One of the problems that I find with refactoring is putting it in through the testing systems. And if you've already got a work item open, you can just add the refactoring around that area of the code to that work item as you go. And it's much easier than trying to separate out the refactoring because any changes to the code have to be tested. So, as I said, refactoring as you go, I found it's the best way.
Yeah, this is a great way if you can take this route. This is the best one, to be honest. But most of the time, I've been working in very different companies and very different approaches to feature delivery. The majority are product driven, which means your product is dictating what they want from you and the time frame, so those deadlines. We want this feature next month, and it's almost non-negotiable. I guess the difference came when I joined ANZ, and it's very different concept for how we can work with engineering telling how much time this will actually take without sacrifices. Because it's basically engineers doing the job, so they would know better than the product, like product owner, for example. And when they impose the deadline on you, you don't have time, unfortunately, to go the refactor on the way. You will have to do whatever they ask of you. This is why it's important to push back and let them know that it's not possible or not feasible, or preferable to do this in more scalable and maintainable way.
Any more questions? No more questions.
Told you it would be easy.
That's good. All right, thank you very much, Jane.
Yeah, unless there's anything else. Cool, all right. Everyone ready?
Everyone, Sam.
Thanks for having me, everybody. My name's Sam, as Pat's mentioned. I'm a designer. Until about a week ago, I was the head of design systems at ANZ, but the new one is here as well, so you can consider this my handover of sorts. Thanks for letting me talk about this, Pat. You did originally ask me to talk about upcycling tote bags, and I came back to you with a presentation about math and data, so I'm sorry, but I hope you find it somewhat interesting. Now, on math in general, again, I'm a designer, so most of my math comes from creating 8-point grids and moving little shapes around them. Even just this is very satisfying and very familiar with all of the work that I do. But I figure I'll start with the end first, which is design system stats and metrics. This is a slide that we showed at ANZ a lot to get stakeholder buy-in and get people to adopt the design system, and it's all based on live data. And it took quite a bit to get to this point, which is a little bit surprising because they are just numbers, but all of it there has been measured and is very accurate, I think. Again, not the great at math. But we also have a bunch of data on kind of the economic impact as well. But anyway, I'll dig into this all kind of bit by bit as we go through. I didn't really want to do a whole what is a design system slide, and I don't think I'm really going to. I think you guys probably know what it is. But I have got a little thing in here, and it's mostly just because I think the industry is a bit weird with design systems, and they kind of gatekeep the term a little bit. As far as I'm concerned, if it helps you design faster, it's a design system, so all of those things. Little IKEA manual, Lego instructions, knitting pattern, it's all design systems. But this is the slide we actually showed to a lot of our corporate stakeholders, which is kind of the same as every other company's. We break things into foundations, UI patterns, which is components and templates, which is kind of like preset screens, and then documentation. The idea is that it exists in design and it exists in code as well. But the reason why I kind of got into measuring it is that I was around when we kicked off the design system from the very beginning, and it was a pretty good point to start measuring because we had nothing. But at the same time, the industry, and I guess like tech industry at large, but also ANZ, had already done a lot of stuff around design systems, and the metrics they were coming up with were kind of, I don't know, a little bit bullshit. And every time I would hear them, I would kind of dig into them a little bit and say, well, that seems like a lot of money. Maybe that's possible, but there wasn't really a lot of evidence behind it. And obviously it's a good value proposition because it's definitely going to save you money, but how much? Give or take. And when we came in and kind of pitched the original design system, we did struggle a little bit because there'd already been existing ones that had kind of attempted to do the same thing, and they never really quite hit that promise that they were going for, and it meant that we had to kind of go uphill quite a bit when people were like, oh, I've heard this before. I don't think I want to give you that much money. These stats here are from those companies' design systems when they first launched. Yeah, pretty sensible, I guess. I don't entirely believe them, and I didn't really think the numbers made sense, but again, designer. So I'm going to run through these kind of 3 impact metric categories that we have, and there's 3 of them in general, and all of them kind of add up to be our final like evaluation, I suppose. And it's the model that we've kind of stuck with and pumps out stuff over time. We don't really do anything to it anymore other than kind of the routine elements of it. And the first one is us talking about usage. So below is kind of where we get this stuff from. Figma, primary design tool we all use. I don't know if you guys use it much, but you'd be surprised how good the data is in Figma's backend API. So this is a look at their library analytics feature, and you can basically bring this up on any published library, and it will drill into a bunch of different stuff. This first one looks at the library as a whole and just gives you like what's been published, how many teams are using it, that kind of stuff. And it's kind of surface level. But the one on the right, that's what happens when you drill into any of the components or the variables, and it will actually break down all of them, tell you where they're used, does tell you where they're broken, which is something that's very useful, and designers don't think we can track, but we can. And it also breaks them down into like their different variants, their different categories, tells you what teams are using them and how often. You can split it across time periods and compare it to other libraries. All in all, it's like super useful. And we actually use this heaps when we start new library builds. So if we're about to, I don't know, do like a refresh of the Android library or something, that's actually a way we can say, looks like nobody's using the fab, and actually definitively know that if we change it, it's not really going to affect too much downstream. So super useful. The other thing we use is Figma's, oh sorry, not this. This is the drill down when you look at individual components, and it actually shows you everywhere they're used, counts it up, and then lets you drill into the files so that you can see everywhere your components are pretty much real time. It's pretty cool. We use this a lot when people are kind of using components for things we didn't expect. So a good example is when we had this like new banner that we were launching, but people really liked the old one, so they just started rejigging this card component to look like the old one. And we were looking at it, and it looked like something that we'd expect to see, but it wasn't until we kind of went into the analytics we realized it was just a whole bunch of like slapped together components. This is Figma's activity logs. This isn't an actual screenshot. That's kind of quite sensitive, and I don't have access to it anymore anyway. But it's super comprehensive. I don't know if you've ever played in the admin area of Figma, but did you know that Figma does key logging and IP tracking? It also logs all text edits that are made in files and any comments that are made between multiplayer users. Just word of the wise. It does do that, but to do that costs quite a bit of money, and I don't think many companies in Australia bother paying for that plan. Either way, it is a great way for us to check who's actually viewing the files, because there's a difference between designers who are super active with inserting components and editing components, and designers who reference that stuff heaps, but may not necessarily be just pumping in buttons and buttons and buttons and buttons and duping them over and over. So it's kind of like a secondary look so that we can still see how much stuff's getting used. And because I've been tracking things for so long, we're able to make these kind of cool charts that show how much the design system usage has changed over time. So this is kind of from late 2021, I guess. Each month going in. Figma deletes the data after, I think, a year now, which has been painful because it means I have to go do a bunch of spreadsheet work every 12 months. But I get to make some pretty cool charts for it, so I'm not that unhappy about it. And that's actually where we get all of this data. Well, not all of it. The stuff on the right, which is covered by my thumbnail, is something else, so that's perfect. But this kind of 600 times every day in the middle, that's the activity logs. The tokens, we get that from analytics. Used by 85 designers, I just track the activity logs and average it out every day, the components, all that kind of stuff. And then we get to make these like bento grids that kind of look pretty compelling and convincing, and obviously I'm cherry picking the stats because, of course. But that makes up kind of the quant part of all of this, I suppose. The next part is this feedback part. So we wanted a bit more qualitative input on how people were using the system. Obviously, we can just look at the stats and kind of get a rough idea, but we didn't often get a lot of feedback. We can get a lot of intentional feedback. So we get a lot of feedback in the form that everyone gets feedback, which is just people ping me on Slack. And this, I know this is pretty snarky, but I also know the audience, so there's no shots at devs here. But this kind of, honestly too long, probably like 2 years, this is how we got a lot of the input for the design system from the like consumers directly. So we ended up coming up with these kind of routine surveys that we did instead, and we split it into these 3 pages. The first is just segmentation, so we can work out who's replying. The next one is these topical questions, so things I might want to know in any given point, like, I don't know, say we've just launched like a web library, want to know if people are using that. And then the last one is this group scorecard, and that's the main reason we did it, because we wanted to be able to report back to the business how people actually find using our stuff across a different group of categories. So the segmentation was basic, just looks like this. It's what platform do you design for? Do you like the web library versus the Android library? How long have you been here for? So we can kind of get a sense for new designers struggling versus old designers and things like that, right? We also have a lot of free text entry. I'll be honest, this is like vanity metrics. We rarely get anything constructive in there, but we do get a lot of nice stuff. So it makes for really good testimonials pages like this. I'm not complaining. Every now and then we get something kind of curly in there, but I don't know, chances are people would still slack that to me, to be honest. But we also, for the topical questions, would ask these kind of ranging questions around, honestly, things I kind of assumed I knew the answer to, but I just wanted some line in the sand. The good news is that I was often wrong about that stuff, so at least it's useful. So I asked, would they like to see me in the office more so they could get in-person support? I was in there anyway, I figured they might find it useful. They didn't really care. They were fine just pinging me on Slack or using whatever other medium. I asked them if they'd like to participate in design system trials, which I wouldn't, so up to them, but they did, pretty much all of them. And we do get some good stuff too. So I also do NPS questioning. I really just throw it in the end because I know it's not like a great metric. And I thought we'd kind of get like middle of the road stuff, but surprisingly we did get like overwhelming. That's incorrect. That one negative is actually a passive, but whatever, semantics. And then the scorecard category. Is this blue okay? I knew when I used it, it would... Oh, it's fine, yeah, contrast. Great. I do have a story about the blue, but it's going to derail this completely, so at the end if you're interested. But scorecard categories, I looked at kind of everything that people measure design systems across in the industry and what's kind of valuable or what's a specific area that we need to report on, and came up with this set. I knew some of them. We basically didn't do it all. Like, we do not do a lot of updates to the team outside of just a blast in Slack or change logs. We didn't really have like a super strong contribution model, so I didn't think we'd get much in that either. But I figured might as well baseline it, because then if we do it, I can report how improved we are. So that's the kind of set list. And then we threw it out with this kind of Likert scale, as you can imagine. And then this fed into the scorecard, which became this screen, which is the one in the ANZ deck that would show how this is how we kind of rank on these areas. Yeah, I was thinking of doing each one like a report card, like I got an A+ in efficiency, but I kind of felt like it would be a bit arbitrary, so I just put the scores in. And then we also had these little notes on the side, which were supposed to be kind of trends and which ones are controversial, and just a way to kind of change it as we go along. And then the last one is value, and this is kind of the newest one. Oh, thank you. And it's basically done through a lot of Excel spreadsheets and also some like live benchmarking exercises that we've done. And I'll start with those. A while ago, we got a bunch of designers to give me like 2 hours and build some fictional screens. Some of them might be surprised if they're here because they built one or many of these and it kind of changed. But the screens don't exist. They just look like screens that would exist in our app. And I got them to design it in 2 separate ways. So the first one is using the system, and it's like, I don't have to explain that. They just do it exactly the way they would have done it in their workday, like today. The second way was this unassisted, simulated method. They couldn't use our Figma resources. They couldn't use like any of the asset repos. They had to use either what was there, which is building things from scratch, or like the Apple's official HIG components and things like that, and they'd have to tweak them based on brand guidelines. Pretty much exactly how we used to do it. They could still use Figma and everything, obviously, but they couldn't reference any like shared files from other designers that would have components and stuff like that. And then we timed it, and here's a little box plot of all that. Obviously, I did it with the intent that it would give me some kind of good feedback. Thankfully, I was right. I think the more compelling thing here is that the standardization is much smaller. So the unassisted method, yeah, it could only take you, what, like 15 minutes? But it could take you like up close to 50 minutes. And if you think about that, like this is just one screen. If you think that about, I don't know, like a whole flow, that's ages. Whereas using the system, it's pretty much always like 5 minutes per screen. And it doesn't really change designer to designer. And so we use this to kind of work out roughly an efficiency gain. I then also marked all of the screens like a teacher with a red pen. I did the original proof, so I knew what the style should be and everything. And then I kind of flagged all these things. And this is so, what's the word, persnickety. No designer would bother doing all of this kind of tweaking and making sure everything's right. So I split them into 2 categories. The first is these like superficial errors that I felt like if a dev got that in handoff, they'd just go, yeah, I get it. It's supposed to be like headline or something, right? They're not going to like quibble over it. And the other one is critical errors, which are things that, in my experience, I've seen go to refinement sessions and teams kind of kick back to a designer to have to rework, with the idea being that we can kind of attach a value to what that rework would look like and how much of it should be applied if we're going through the unassisted method. These are the error counts. I hope it's kind of visible, but that one on the left in the screens, that's all of the participants' screens overlaid on top of each other, with the pink being the areas that they differ from the proof. The right is the same, but for the one using the design system. And then that's the error count. So obviously, like, the total errors is ridiculous, but again, incredibly over the top. But the critical ones are the ones that matters, and that's still a pretty big differential, right? And that is how we came to those values on the right that I was mentioning earlier, which is the 7.5x faster and the 16 less UI design errors, 12 less handoff rework, which is the critical errors. And then from all of this so far, like all three of these methods, we were roughly able to come up with this formula. I don't know what it means, but I know it's right. I just don't know how to say it in a way that sounds smart. But all of these values, these are all things we pulled. So number of users, I know this because of the activity logs. The average annual cost of business per designer. I got someone from operations and accounting to give me that data. Apparently it's different to average salary. There's like a multiplier on top of it that factors in like training and like leave and whatever else. The utilization rate, it's self-reported. I just asked designers in the surveys or got them to tell me how much of their workday they spend using system resources. The number of maintainers I know because I hired them. And then the bottom three are those stats from the efficiency live benchmarking tests, which is that whole complicated part in the parentheses down there. Anyway, math. The idea behind the ROI multiple is that I could give the business a, hey, if you give me $1, I give you X, right? And it's quite, I guess, contentious, especially in like a corpo land, because I'm not like getting a profit out of this. I don't get $1 and then give them back like $5. We just unlock $5 of time that we can use on other things. So you kind of have to phrase it in like a delicate way, I guess. But that's the broad appeal. This all being said, it's a little bit iffy because all of the design system users are definitely not using the same utilization rate. I could average it out, which is what I did originally, but it's wildly wrong because we have so many users who are just using it for very quick tasks. So we already broke all of the users into these classes. I think the diagram kind of explains itself, but enablement is the design system team. Contributors are those users who are feeding back into the design system, so they use it heaps. It's like their primary workday tool. Adopters are people who have brought it in, but they're not feeding it back anything. So they're using it kind of, a fair bit, but not as much. Modifiers are people who are using it superficially. They reference it heaps, but they've forked their code base or their design repo, so they're not really pushing anything in or referencing it as much as others. And samplers are like service designers who will come in and want like screens for decks, or they want to mock up something quickly, but they're not going to deliver it. So things like that. With all of that, we put together these stats. It's going to get like so spreadsheet heavy now, so I'm sorry. The numbers are blurred because I've been told that that's privileged or something like that. But you're pretty smart. You can all probably work it out. And yeah, that's what we come up with. This is just the thing that lives in Excel and kind of pumps out data that I condense into little snippets and put in these like snapshot slides. The blue ones are the ones I usually use. The money is blurred out. They're all the hours. A lot of this is quite like over the top. So it's the same thing. Like I might do hours and days and weeks and work that all out. But one of them will frame better because if you say like months, people will be like, wow, that's ridiculous. How are they saving that many months? But if you say hours, they're kind of like, well, it's a lot of hours. And it's just because of the like framing of work days in like a full-time salaries year. But I've presented it enough now that I kind of know what people like. So I just pander. Anyway, I'm not going to linger on this too much. This is where it all comes out at. And this is kind of, in my opinion, the things that people like, which is this 87% less time on design tasks, because that seems high. If it was 100, you'd be doing nothing. So it's pretty close. And it recovers 2 days, 2 work days per week for designers that adopt it. That's that kind of delicate language because obviously they're not getting like a 9-day week. They're just getting more time to do other stuff. 44K hours. Hours is the one that wins, over days and months. But it is equivalent to having an extra 23 full-time employees on staff, which seems high, but I haven't told you how many the original baseline is, so it's kind of iffy. But the 6.5, that's the ROI, and that's kind of the main one, really, which is that for every dollar you invest in the design system, we give you back 6.5 in unlocked time, right? Again, it's not cash in hand, and I appreciate that's actually a terrible graphic to put with it. Yeah, I'll change that. But there's a cool stat under it, which is that the system breaks even in 2 months. That's pretty easy to work out. We just work out how much we pay and then divide it all up, right? But it does overall show that this thing doesn't cost heaps of money, and it pays for itself pretty quickly, and it gives you like a heap. So spend like more money on it, right? That's the idea anyway. And look, that's pretty much it. I think I made like awesome time here. But I do have one last slide, which is this. So our design system was shortlisted for the Design System Awards this year. Oh, that wasn't a, yeah. That wasn't a deliberate thing. Anyway, yeah, I want to be a good sport about it and all, but I don't really care. That QR code is a way that you can vote for the public side of this awards. We're nominated in the Best Adoption category, which I think, thanks to having a lot of data, kind of went a long way. But there's also, I think it's called People's Champion or some kind of name like that. Anyway, you can vote for us, and I'll be so grateful if you do. I know it sounds sarcastic, but I'm being serious. Yeah, consider this like blatant peer pressure, thumbing the scales. And that's it. You can find me on LinkedIn or in here somewhere. I will be taking questions, as long as they're not about math.
Okay, so how would you compare ANZ's design system with others you've worked on in the past? And have you seen sort of any correlation in improvements, whether superficial or actually mathed out?
To ours or?
Hours, whatever metric you want.
Oh, sure. I mean, obviously I'm not there now, but I was at ANZ for a long time, so it's the first one I would have like worked on myself rather than just consumed. But because we had like a lot of companies that we worked with, I have basically used all of the major vendors out there. It compares pretty well. There used to be a slide in the pack that literally compares them, but I didn't put it in because it looks a bit wanky. Against the other banks, it compares pretty well. The data is much, much better. But having seen some of the other banks' things, there's definitely things they're doing better than us. We got in a lot earlier than them, all said and done. Banks have basically been doing design systems for kind of like 10 years. They've just been redoing them like every 3 years. So we're kind of the one that got in at a point and then stuck. Other companies like, I guess, Atlassian report on theirs quite a bit. Their numbers are so high, but the rates we are better than. So that's good. But they also have so many people using their stuff, right? Yeah. Does that answer? Yeah. Great.
Thanks, Sam. Two questions. Why does it require all this convincing? And second, how can a small team adopt design systems? Like, not a big bank.
So the first one, why does it need all this convincing? It's a good question. You'd think the value would be evident. If I had to hazard a guess based on like the stakeholders I've spoken to, it's that it's a team that does not really deliver anything tangible to market. So you're trying to convince like a company that wants to move at pace to give you like several full-time employees to just work on what they see as like side of desk work. And so it's not until you can kind of prove there is some tangible outcome that they're more willing to invest in it. And if you look up like how do I start a design system at my company, it's all around convincing your like executives and stuff like that. So it seems to be kind of a big thing, but again, whilst dev metrics for design systems are really well documented and it's kind of pretty much baked into the process, there really isn't anything out there for design or measuring the design process rather than the design outcome. And as far as like how can a small team adopt it, this probably goes counter to what I said, but even at ANZ, it started as like a side of desk project. I think you do need to prove the value a little bit. Nobody's just gonna kind of like buy into it. There needs to be some, it doesn't have to be huge, like even if you're just wrapping like a small UI library or whatever and showing that people are adopting it. Once you kind of get just a little bit of adoption, I found it really like snowballed. Even in teams who we couldn't like get a foot in the door, if we just got like one designer on board, we'd really like help them out and give them access to everything and like spend a lot more time supporting them than we usually would most consumers, just because they would then become huge advocates. And really, that's like the best thing we ever had. Advocates for the design system who would then go spread it throughout the business.
How big of a role does the engineering team play in the design system, and will you miss them after leaving ANZ?
Yeah, okay. Generic question, yeah. Huge. The engineering plays like the biggest part. Yeah. I mean, I would literally tell the stakeholders, like, this is basically all them. I'm just the guy like presenting it and putting the fun little graphics up here. But like, it lives and dies by the work you guys are doing. Sorry, I said you guys, but I know this is not a question from you. No, I mean, even things like accessibility, which is so heavily baked into the system. Designers like talk a big accessibility game, but we're touching like that really small slice of color accessibility, whereas you guys are doing like everything. And I think the more we kind of lean into that, the better. Because whilst we had a really weird model in ANZ where we weren't a design system team that had, you know, everyone in it, it was more like, this is the design system team, this is the iOS design system team. I think that actually worked really well and to our benefit, because it meant that like every area was a specialist in what they did and would advocate for their patch, which is unusual, but went really well. Oh, and yeah, I'll really miss them.
Any other questions?
Hello. The design system should pay off, I believe, when it's big enough, so you can build your screens much faster rather than on the small. So my question is, based on the last slide, or almost last one, ROI was about 2 months, or breaking even.
Yep.
So does it mean that if you spend a couple of months of building just design system from zero, it will be already kind of profitable?
So what I haven't put in here, because it wasn't really applicable to us, is like a ramp-up cost. And some of the other formulas that people do have out there do have that in there, which is basically like, you're gonna get nothing for a while, but then you'll get something, and then we pay that something off in X amount of time. So it's definitely like a metric that people put into these formulas, especially companies, I mean, teams that are trying to like sell it in. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had a better answer other than I haven't done it. But yeah, it's definitely like a consideration. I guess some examples from the ones I've seen in the past, who was it? I think it was Salesforce's Lightning one. They were talking about like their initial cost taking years to pay back, but it was also an incredibly like heavy team. There was a guy who at a conference was a one-man design system team, and he said he paid his own off in 6 months, and I think he spent 2.5 years building it, so he must have had a pretty big consumer base, but either way. Now I'm gonna go do it after this because it seems like fun, yeah.
Thanks, Sam. That's a pretty amazing ROI. So, why do you think that companies are cutting design teams? Why do you think the market? Why is the market for UX designers so tough? If we're looking at this kind of ROI, I mean, it doesn't balance.
Yeah, great question. I don't know. Do you really want to answer? I mean, honestly, looking at other design system teams, it does seem to be one area that's growing quite a bit. I think it's largely because if you look at like a lot of these AI model tools that are coming out for design, they're putting out a bunch of shit and there's no like guardrails around it. And design systems seems to be the kind of guardrails company. They were in the business of building them. So I think it's getting more traction for that. It's certainly like, not that I'm looking at job boards a lot, but it's certainly a role that's getting up there a lot more than I've seen in the past, which is great, but yeah, I don't know. But thank you for saying the ROI is great, because I love that.
couple more. That's it. On.
Hey, thank you. I've interviewed for a design systems role at another big bank at some point.
Mm-hmm. Was it us?
It had a lot more yellow in their brand.
Yeah. I'll try and put it together, yeah.
I was always surprised how much they're talking about internal adoption, because I came from a much smaller company, and I guess for me it was just, you had to adopt the design system. I mean, it was the design system that we built internally, and it was holding the brand, so
yeah, what a luxury.
I'm just really curious about that, like how much was that required to be used by the designers, or what did you do to get adoption higher?
Yeah, big struggle for us, to be honest, and I can see why in a small company it might be easier, but at least for us, I can't speak to any other banks that are other colours, but at least for us, ANZ is run like several mini companies, really. Like in my division, we had incredible adoption, like 98% or something like that, which basically at that point is like one designer isn't using it, and I can convince one designer. But other divisions would be like 1%, really, because they might be doing their own thing. They might not want to rely too heavily on our resources. They would feel that they're kind of at the back of the queue for support. They might be building like stuff that's too different. They feel like they need custom work. Like, it's annoying, and it's certainly a struggle, and it's a hurdle, and that's why we kind of went so hard into trying finding advocates and champions. And that was pretty effective. We certainly grew in some areas. Others we even towards the end of my tenure were making no traction with them. And this is the kind of stuff we'd show them, so it's compelling. It's just not compelling enough to get over that you won't have complete autonomy on the system because it's not under you, I suppose. Which is a good argument to centralise it, because it was within one area of the bank, and so I think there's a competitive edge to that as well. But this is probably going too far into bank politics.
Last question.
Yeah.
Oh, second last question.
That kind of stole a bit of my question, but in terms of keeping a design system going, keeping it relevant, did you have any sort of insights around that? Because I've seen a lot of times design systems slowly develop this friction where designers are going ahead, so the design system either goes ahead with them and the engineering side falls behind, and then that slows things down, or the design system waits for the engineering side to keep up, and then designers go off and build their own custom layouts because they can't wait for it.
Yeah, that does happen. Look, it still happened with us as well, but the way we kind of tackled it, I suppose, was by trying to not act as this, I guess, governing force and enforcing guidelines and making people kind of have to revert it. We did let people change things if they needed, and new adopters who would come in and say, we don't really want to do this, we want to build it our own custom way, we'd say, well, how much of it can we give you? And we'd get a foot in the door. And that was usually enough once they were in for us to, start helping them make changes and get it across the road. But certainly people would change things. It's a tricky one. As far as the devs kind of disagreeing with designers, to be honest, I don't think we really have a lot of that. I think probably pretty lucky in that sense. But a good way that I did it with some of my ex-colleagues here was that the devs in enablement would almost police the squad designers, and the enablement designers would almost police the squad developers in a sense, because it's easy to blame someone else and then have them be like, oh, it's a design requirement, and then they'd go, oh, okay, well, we'd have to work on it. But it was also a way I would catch a lot of the issues happening in engineering, they would catch a lot of the issues in design that we otherwise weren't noticing. And so it helped us kind of keep it in check through that kind of network, I suppose. Does that kind of answer? You can say no.
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
Thanks for your talk.
No worries.
As someone with, I guess, limited design experience, I can understand why maybe when starting a new role or joining a new company, you would have to secure that stakeholder buy-in for how you might want to run things, for example. But once you've secured that, as well as there's no fear of the maintenance of that design system being put in place, I guess continuing to be supported, what other priorities or interests would you be exploring within a role if you didn't have to worry about that buy-in?
That's a good question. Yeah. So I guess where it was, I suppose like a week ago, it could really just run in its current state fine. There wouldn't be a big issue. The reason we still continued to push for like funding and adoption like continuously is that often when we would bring new people in to adopt, they didn't want to pay any money for it. So it was on us to do it. So as we grew, we were getting more and more stretched despite not having like funding to really stretch. And so we'd still do all of this stuff to try and basically make the case so that people would understand the value and then be willing to fund it. The actual work we would do regardless, even if we had the time. Like we still maintain updates with new versions of OSs and stuff. We're still kind of trying to add in MCP features if we can. It's just stretched because of like the resourcing. And I will say that like we did grow a lot in the last couple of years through, I guess, being able to sell it. But we did not grow at the pace that the adoption grew. And that was quite tricky.
That was awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
All right, just a round of applause for our speakers one more time. Jane and Sam, awesome. Just a reminder about the other events coming up this month. Coding Night on next Wednesday, 15th of October. Social Night, 28th of October. Does anyone want to say anything? All good? Yep, great. This Mantle Group and REA Group. And we're done. We're done. Great, thanks for joining us. Come to the Mitre Tavern. Yep, great. Awesome. Oh, I should stay there till you play the music.